Hey everyone, it's Caitlin and welcome to another video. So I recently posted a YouTube video asking you guys to ask me questions about school, like college, graduate school, and physical therapy school, because I am a current student in a graduate program that's studying physical therapy. And I got a lot of questions and I'm really excited to give you guys my answers and opinions. However, there were a lot of questions, so I've decided to divide the video into 3 sections. So this first section is just going to be about college as an undergraduate school, or uni as other countries would say. So it's going to be about applications, roommates, stuff like that. I'm going to try to list all of the questions in the description of the video so you can jump ahead to a specific question if you asked it or if you're more interested in that. So without further ado, I have all the questions typed out here on my computer and I'm just going to go through them as quickly as possible. So let's get started. So the first question is, how did you study for your SAT exam? And so for me, I'm actually pretty okay at standardized testing. I don't have to work too hard. So I think that's the thing you first need to think about, like if you're good at taking standardized tests. Because if you're not very good, you're going to need to study a lot more than someone who is a genius at standardized testing and doesn't need to study at all. And the SAT is pretty general, if I remember correctly. It's just like English, like as in grammar, and then reading comprehension, and then a math section. So it's kind of basic skills. So for me personally, I was taking hard enough classes in high school that I really didn't need to study too much. I did buy a book, but to be honest, I did not put a lot of effort into the SATs, and I got a good enough score that I knew I needed to be able to apply to colleges. So for me, I was fortunate enough to take the SAT multiple times. So the first time I didn't study at all, just to sort of get a baseline score, and then I studied a little bit more grammar because that was my worst section, and then I think I took it 2 more times after that to try to improve my score. But yeah, you kind of need to see what works for you, and if you really do need to study more, I would encourage looking into like a Kaplan class if you're not dedicated enough to study on your own, because I know I wasn't. Okay, the next question is, did you take APs in high school and were your credits accepted by your university? Yes, I actually took a lot of AP classes. I took 6 in total. I took 2 my junior year and 4 my senior year. And you don't have to do that if you don't feel that motivated. I was a very motivated student. But almost all of my credits were accepted by my university, which was actually really nice. I think I came in with 20 credits at least, so I could have graduated a semester early, but my major didn't really allow for that. But just because you take an AP class doesn't mean you're not going to have to take that class in college. You have to do well on the AP exams. So I prepared really well. I went to a good school and I was able to get 4s or 5s on almost all of my exams. And because of that, I was able to use those credits. I know the school that I went to had a list on their website of the minimum scores you needed to get on your AP exam in order for that to apply for a class. So you could definitely check that out if you already know what school you're going to, and that can serve as motivation to study more and work harder in those classes as well. Okay, the next question is, do I have to focus mostly on solving my weaknesses or enhancing my strengths when it comes to school? And this is a very challenging question, to be honest. I was like, wow, that's a really good question. I think it depends on how weak your weaknesses are and how strong your strengths are. So if you're overall a pretty well-rounded student, but you just have one thing that you're really, really bad at, I would work at improving that. Whereas if you're just like overall a mediocre student, you don't have anything too bad, but you don't have anything too great, I would try to work on improving some strengths as well. I don't know, that's the best I can come up with. And then the next question is, did you take any gap years and would I recommend taking one, or do I regret not taking one? So I feel like this is a really common question, and I see a lot of YouTubers making videos about this as well, because you know, a lot of them aren't in college or chose not to get a higher education. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that inherently. If you're doing a job that doesn't require going to college, why waste your money and go to college? But for me personally, I knew since almost the beginning of high school that I wanted to study physical therapy, and I had to go to school in order to get that degree. And no, I did not take a gap year between high school and college, and honestly, I feel like for me personally, I guess I didn't really need to. I guess some people were more mature than me when they graduated high school and they had a larger worldview and really knew what they wanted to do with their life. But honestly, I don't even think taking a gap year for me would have been very beneficial, because I still wasn't completely sure of who I was as a person, and I definitely grew a lot and found that out a lot more in college, and I did have a really positive college experience. And when I graduated high school, I was just really motivated and wanting to pursue my degree and get on that as soon as possible. So I definitely don't regret not taking a gap year, but I think you need to see like what you're thinking about the most. If you are graduating high school and you're like, man, I really don't know what I want to do with my life yet, maybe I need to take some time to think about it, or I want to get a job and work for a year so I have less student loans, I think that that's totally acceptable to take a gap year. But if you know what you want and you're like ready to get it, I would just say go for it and go to college. So the next question is, how can I afford to pay for college? And unfortunately, America does not have a great support system when it comes to paying for your education. So like most students, I did take out student loans. I feel very grateful that my parents were able to support me in going to college, so they did help me pay for most of my undergraduate education. I did work a job as well. I worked as a waitress. I got a job in high school and I worked all the way through my senior year, sometimes just in the summer, sometimes during classes as well. So I used that. You do have a financial aid option if you're in the United States. It's called the FAFSA. Get your parents filled out for you. I don't know, my dad did it for me. I'm also thankful for that. So you do have financial aid options depending on how much your family makes, or if you're financially independent, you will definitely get student loans to help cover the cost of your tuition. I would also suggest looking into scholarships though, because you don't have to pay scholarships back. So if you have really good grades, you can apply for an academic scholarship. If you're athletic, those are a little harder to get, but you can get an athletic scholarship. But there are also a lot of like random scholarships out in the internet or through various organizations that you can apply to by like writing a creative essay. And I know my university offered a lot of scholarships for minority students or people from other countries, so I would definitely look into that as well, and it's always worth a shot, you know. The next question is, how do you find a college that is right for you? So there's a lot of factors to consider when you're looking for college, such as distance from home, what the campus is like, what the student life is like, what you're going to be able to do on your campus versus outside of your campus, if you can afford your school, if the academic program is strong. So I think you should take time to think about what of those things are the most important to you. So if you value like a location really close to the city, then maybe you would only apply to urban schools. Or if you really wanted to be close to home, you would look at schools that were more in your area. For me, I chose to go to the University of Pittsburgh, for those of you who don't know, and I'm originally from Maryland, and it was about 4 hours from home, and I wasn't too concerned about it, but I liked that it was on an urban campus, and I was going to study physical therapy, and I liked how that school was connected to a health system that was right in the area. And with your student IDs, you get free access to public transportation, which I thought was super awesome. And I personally liked being in the city versus in a less populated area, because I felt I had more cultural opportunities and was able to go out to, you know, more unique restaurants or go to movies or go see concerts if I wanted to. But I also think it's really important to visit all of the schools you're applying for if you can afford it, because I had a list of like everything that I wanted in a school and things that I didn't want. But, you know, you sort of just go to the college campus and it just feels right. At least that's how it felt for me and Pitt. And I went to other schools that I thought I was going to absolutely love, but when I got there, there was just like the attitude of the students and just something in the air that I didn't really feel as strongly as I thought I would have. So I would definitely recommend visiting your schools if you can. Also, when you're applying to schools and you're trying to consider which ones are your top choices, I think it's really helpful to make a pro and con list of all the schools. And if you're not like completely sold on one school, you can see which school has the most pros versus which one you seem to be writing more cons for. So you probably don't want to go to that one as much as the one that has like the most pros, if you get what I'm saying. Okay, the next question is it important to apply to a college that specializes in your degree, or is it okay to stay local? And this kind of relates to the last question. I think you need to do what's important for you. Think about that, because if you're the kind of person who gets homesick, and there's nothing wrong with that, and you need to see your parents every weekend or like a few times a month, even if you went to the top school for whatever thing you wanted to specialize in and you were so far away from home, you're not going to do as well because you're going to be homesick and you're going to be wanting to go home and you're not going to be as dedicated to your studies. So I think you need to consider that. And if you're applying for like a more general major, like, I don't know, communications, their schools have better programs, and some schools are known for better medical programs, whereas some schools have a really awesome engineering program. Some schools may have really awesome English writing programs. And so I think there is a benefit to going to those schools. It kind of depends what you want to do. So if your profession, if you need to have a lot of interpersonal connections within that community, I think it's really important to go to a good school, such as like law school. You want to go to a well-known law school. Same thing could go with English, like if you're planning on entering journalism, or if you want to do something with like TV and broadcasting, it is good to have those connections as well. I went to my school because they had a rehabilitation science major, which I had never seen before, and I am really happy that I chose to go to that school because I feel like I'm very well prepared for graduate school right now, and I definitely have some educational advantages over some of my other classmates who went to smaller schools or schools that didn't focus as specifically in that area. So at the end of the day, I do think there is an advantage to going to a school that is well known for your major. However, if you feel like you need to be closer to home, I think that's something to consider as well. The next question is, how can I choose a degree? I really don't know what to do with my life. And honestly, I can't give you an answer for that because I can't tell you what to do with your life. It's your life, you know? For me personally, I've always been attracted to the profession of physical therapy, and I looked into it more. I shadowed other physical therapists. I've always liked science, and it just worked out that it was the career that I did want to do. However, if you have no idea, I guess I would make a list of all the things that you like doing and see if you can think of any careers that fit into that list. So I don't know, if you really like food styling and photography, maybe you want to look into more like digital media. And if you have the opportunity to shadow or visit professionals who are already working in a job you think you might like, I would definitely take advantage of that. Even if you don't know someone, you can send out an email to a company and ask if you could come in for a day and shadow. And I feel like unless it's a high security situation, people shouldn't really be opposed to that. But that being said, if you have no clue what you want to do with your life, this is one of those situations where I think it might be beneficial to take a gap year and not go straight to college, because honestly, it is a waste of money if you go to college and you don't really know what you want to do with your life, and then you're constantly changing your major and spending a lot more money on tuition. You end up being in school for longer. And yeah, the next question is, when is it too late to change your major? And I also had another response to this that was pretty similar, and someone said, I'm a sophomore undergrad and I feel directionless and confused. They have no strong affinity for school, location, or even their major. Do I think taking a semester or two off to travel, intern, or work and find their true direction would be a good idea, or do I transfer to another school and hope for the best? So, one, honestly, it's never too late to change your major because your college is going to keep accepting you and they love that you're paying them. But that being said, I would try to just stick with one major because, like I said, that gets really expensive. And for this person who wrote this comment to me, I don't think that there's anything wrong with taking time off. And if you're not inspired to study what you're studying, like, do you really want to do that for the rest of your life? I don't think so. And I also don't think it would be good to transfer to another school and hope for the best, because what if the exact same thing happens and then you spend all that money like moving somewhere else? I think that our society thinks that you have to go to college right after you graduate and you have to spend your full time in the education system. But if that isn't working for you, it's totally okay to take a break because you're saving more money in the long run, and you need to value your happiness and do something that you actually love. Like, you don't want to be stuck in that 9-to-5 job that you hate and only have the weekends to truly live your life. Then the next question I think I kind of already covered, but is why did you apply to Pitt for undergrad? Do you think studying rehabilitation science in undergrad has helped you in PT school, and like what kind of classes did you take in that major? I already mentioned why I applied to Pitt for undergrad. I love the location, I love the opportunities. They have an awesome PT rehab science major, and then their physical therapy school is in the top 10 in the nation, so I knew I'd be making really good connections, and if I wanted to apply there for graduate school, that would really help me get my foot in the door. So, and I also studied rehabilitation science because it was most applicable to physical therapy, and I thought that program was really unique, and the classes that I took, I'm taking some very similar classes in graduate school right now. They're definitely harder because they are graduate level classes, but I think I got a great background that I might not have gotten at other schools if I just chosen a more general major such as biology. If you're really interested to see all the classes I took, you can just go to the University of Pittsburgh School of Health and Rehabilitation Science webpage, and they have a list of all of the required classes that you have to take within that program, and they do have class descriptions as well. But generally, I did take some research classes. I took classes that are more introductory into physical therapy. I took anatomy, neuroscience, kinesiology, exercise physiology, and a bunch of other classes as well, but they all directly related to physical therapy, and I'm really grateful that I did choose to go to that school. And if you're interested in PT, I would definitely consider Pitt for undergrad. I think they have a really strong program. So now we're going to move more into college, everyday life, and living. So the next question is, how's your transition between living at home with family to living on your own? And I didn't have this transition immediately. I'm going to talk more about going to a dorm because I think that's what you mean by living on your own, because at most schools it is required for you to live on campus for the first year if you're not a commuter student. And that's what I did at Pittsburgh. I lived in a dorm. I lived on a floor with all other girls, and I had one other roommate. And the transition between living at home and living at school, it was kind of exciting for me. I mentioned I don't really get homesick, and I get like really excited and involved in the area that I'm currently in. And that's not to say that I didn't miss my parents and that I don't love my parents. I still talk to them and Skype with them, but I was also really happy to like sort of have a challenge and be living in a new environment. And living in a dorm is definitely different because, you know, you don't really have access to a kitchen. I was on the school meal plan. I had to do my own laundry for the first time. I know some people already do their laundry, but my parents did it for me. So I think the hardest thing is sort of establishing a routine and, you know, getting on a consistent basis and being like, oh, like I had to make my own breakfast if your parents made it for you before. Or I have to remember to actually clean my room, and I have to remember to do my laundry and set up a time so I'd be able to do that and still manage my classes and have a social life as well. But honestly, I think it's a learning experience, and I do think living in the dorms can be positive because you're with a bunch of other students who are going through the same thing as you, and you guys are all sort of figuring it out at the same time, so you can get tips from your friends and you know that you're not really in it alone. So the next question was, what's the hardest thing about living alone? So just for clarification, I only lived in the dorms my freshman year of college, and then afterwards I moved off campus, but I was still really close to my school's campus, and I lived in an apartment with 2 other girls. And honestly, I'm gonna say that really wasn't too much different from living in the dorms, aside for the fact that, one, I now had my own room and didn't have to share a room with someone else, which I really appreciated because I do like my alone time and sort of having my own personal space. And 2, I had a kitchen and could cook my meals. So it was just like a few extra responsibilities. Like now we had to clean our bathroom and we had to clean our kitchen, and I had to go grocery shopping. But I'd say like developing a routine and sort of being a more independent person is the hardest part, and I developed most of those skills my freshman year of college. It was just like a little bit more going into my sophomore year when I had to live off campus. So the next question is, do you get homesick often? And I'm pretty sure I've covered this, in some other responses, but no. So for me personally, I don't get homesick. I wouldn't be the best person to give you advice on if you are homesick or you're experiencing this, but I will say that being homesick is completely normal and it's completely okay. And if you need to call your parents like every day, then that's totally fine. Like, you can Skype with them, you can keep up with them. You don't need to forget about your friends or your family that you had back at home if you're going to school in a different area. And that being said, if you're not homesick like me, it's also okay to talk to your parents a little less. Like, don't completely cut them out of your life. You can like text them every day, or like call them once a week, or Skype with them like once a month or something, but still let them know that you are thinking about them, especially if they're helping you pay for your college education. But yeah, if you're looking for homesickness tips, unfortunately I can't really give those to you because I don't think I've ever really felt homesick for more than like an hour. So the next question is, how did you find your roommates? So my freshman year, I decided to go through the random roommate program, and I honestly am very happy that I did. When you go through the roommate program, most schools will have you fill out a survey saying if you're a morning person, if you're a night person, if you like, I don't know if they asked me about partying, I feel like they did though, and like how clean you are, definitely, if you have any like dietary preferences, I think. And they asked you a few other like general living questions. So when you do a random roommate, you're not really going to get someone who is 100% incompatible with you unless your school like really screwed it up, to be honest. And I got along with my roommate really, really well. We like, as I like to say, we peacefully coexisted and we were friendly with each other. We had a very similar major, but we actually didn't really have any classes together. But, you know, we would chat when we got home, but we didn't really do too much outside of living together. So like, we were friendly when we lived together, but we didn't spend all of our time together. But I also think that's really helpful too, because we didn't get sick of each other. And my school also had a Facebook page for incoming freshmen where people got to talk, and I do know some friends who chose a roommate through there. So they didn't go through the random roommate program. They just messaged a few people online before they started school, and they found a person who they thought they'd be really good friends with, and they decided to live with them. And I think this is both a positive and a negative thing. And from my experience, I will say I think the majority of those online relationships backfired, and by the end of the year, the people totally hated each other and hated living with each other. And that's the thing, like, when you meet people online, like, they could seem cool at first, but maybe you don't want to live with someone who you're going to want to spend every waking moment with. Like, maybe it's good to meet some friends online and then just like hang out with them once you're at school, but maybe you don't want to live with someone who's going to be your best friend if you think you also need your personal space. Now, that being said, there were some people who chose to live together and it totally worked out, and they were awesome and they loved hanging out with each other all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think you should consider if you're the kind of person who needs your personal space. And also, for me, I also chose a random roommate because if it didn't work out with my roommate and I didn't like them, I wouldn't have the previous expectation that we were supposed to be friends, because like I committed to living with them online because we seem to have a lot in common, and like it wouldn't necessarily be my fault if things didn't work out. So yeah. All right, the next question is, how do I make friends in college? And this varies a lot, but I will say you're not going to make any friends in college if you sit in your dorm room and stay on the internet the whole time. You'll have friends from back home, you'll have friends through the internet, but you're not going to have any friends in real life. And it's not because people don't want to hang out with you, but if you don't put yourself out there, people also aren't going to reciprocate back, and you're not going to be able to develop relationships. Because if you're just quiet and you sit in your room the whole time, people will just think you're like a very introverted person, and they might take that as you don't want to be friends with anyone. And this was harder for me because I am a shyer person, but honestly, you really need to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And especially for the first month or so of college, all of the freshmen, for the most part, are very friendly and open to making friends because almost everyone is in the same situation as you, and people might have one or two friends from back home that they want to hang out with, but there are also a lot of other kids who don't know anyone. Like, I didn't know anyone, and they're looking to make new friends. So in terms of making friends, I also think it's really important to get involved in your campus. I made a lot of my friends through the floor that I lived on my freshman year, and I do think that is common. But if you find that you don't get along with your floor mates, I would definitely suggest looking into the clubs that your campus has to offer. Not only will you be able to meet other freshmen or younger students who have similar interests as you, you'll also be able to meet some older students and upperclassmen as well, and they can give you advice and tips on college too. Also, if you're religious, I know there's usually like Bible studies. You could join that. You could join intramural sports. I also think you can become friends with people in your classes. So like if you sit next to someone who you think is really cool in your class, ask them if they want to get lunch sometime. And the worst thing that can happen is they say no, but I highly doubt that that's going to happen. So overall, you really just have to put yourself out there and talk to a lot of different people. And then if you find someone who you really love, like try to hang out with them more and develop a friendship that way. And really realize that you're all in the same boat and you all want to make friends. So you're definitely not alone and no one hates you. Okay, the next question is, how do I tell people that I'm vegan in college? Now, I think that this is a personal decision. But for me personally, I don't tell people that I'm vegan. I sort of just let it happen naturally, and I feel like people are more willing to accept you as a vegan if you don't walk up to someone and you're like, "Hi, my name is Caitlin, I'm a vegan," as Nicole Arbor did in her Dear Vegans video. Like, so for me, I'll just meet my friends and be like, "Hey, like, my name is Caitlin, I'm from here, I studied this." And then when we go out to eat or something, or we're at the cafeteria, people will be like, "Oh, like you didn't get any meat?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm a vegan, I don't eat that." And that way it's like much more natural and doesn't have to seem forced. I was a vegetarian my first 3 years of college. I wasn't vegan, but I still did tell people I was vegetarian, but I still used the same philosophy. Like when we just went out to eat, they'd be like, "Oh, you didn't order meat?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm vegetarian, I don't eat meat." Or if you're like going out to a restaurant and there aren't any vegan options, then it would be appropriate to be like, "Hey guys, like I'm a vegan, actually I don't eat meat or dairy or animal products. Do you think we could pick this restaurant instead that has more vegan friendly options?" But if you do want to become friends with other vegans, most schools do have like a vegan or vegetarian club. So I would definitely look into joining that, and in that way you can make other friends who are vegan or vegetarian as well. And I feel like generally people like talking about food, so you could probably talk to them about a lot of things. And the next question is, did I go through Rush and like my opinion on sororities and fraternities? And personally, I did not go through Rush. If you guys know me, I think you could tell that I don't really have the personality of someone who I think would thrive in a sorority. And that's also why I chose to go to the University of Pittsburgh, because sororities and Greek life like really aren't that big of a deal on campus. So you could join them and be in them, and the people who are in them love them. But you could also not be in them and not feel like you were excluded from your campus. And I did not feel excluded at all. I did not care what the sororities were doing, and they were just doing their own thing. I was happy and they were happy. I do think being in a sorority can be a positive experience if that is your personality type, and if you're like more outgoing and you like to do like service projects and like more girly things, and you like to go out and like go to parties and meet other people. But personally, that just wasn't what I was into, so I was never interested in it at all. And yeah, but if you like doing it, then I think you should at least give it a shot. And if you're semi-interested, you should still check it out, because maybe you will fall in love with it. And all sororities are different too, so I can't speak for all of them, but that's just my personal experience. All right, so the next question is, what's a typical college day look like? And to be honest, that is not an easy question to answer, because it depends on the student. It depends on your major. It depends how many classes you have. It depends on the day of the week. I'd say the biggest difference between college and high school is you have a lot more free time in college, and your classes in college are a lot longer. They'll, like for me personally, I either met 3 times a week and they were only an hour then, or I'd meet 2 times a week and they'd be like an hour and a half to 2 hours, or I'd meet once a week and then they'd be 3 to 4 hours. Schedule will be weirder in college because you may not necessarily have all of your classes in a row. You may have like long awkward breaks, or you may have like a 10-minute break where you have to run to your next class. So for the most part though, you do have a lot more free time during the day, I would say, and that's up to you as to what you want to do with it. Some kids would schedule their classes really late and sleep in and then stay up really late at night. Some kids would go to the gym. Some kids would work ahead on their homework. I did more gym and homework type things. And some kids would like go and hang out with our friends and not really focus on school. So I think that college is honestly what you make of it. So if you want to be productive, you can be productive in your extra free time. If you don't want to be productive, I don't know why you're in college, but you can not do that as well. The next question is, how do I study specifically? And I actually talk about this in a recent video that I posted about procrastination and how I studied, so I will link that in the description of this video. A few other people did ask questions on studying and study tips, and I feel like I already encompassed all of those questions in that video, and this video is already going to be long enough already, so you guys can check that video out if you're interested. The next question I almost didn't include in this video, but it's someone asked me how to cheat effectively and safely. And I'm sorry, but this question pisses me off. Like, I was raised to be a very honest student and to never cheat, and college and your education is really what you put into it. So why do you want to cheat and just to get an A when you're literally learning nothing and you're not going to be able to use that class in your future? Like, why are you even taking that class to begin with? And like, if you think about it, I don't want a doctor who cheated on all their classes and literally knows nothing about my health and could hurt me in the long term. That being said, I don't want a plumber to fix my pipes if they cheated on all their exams. It doesn't matter what type of career you're going into, like whether you're going to be a doctor or an engineer or like work in advertising, no one wants a cheater, and you're only hurting yourself in the long run. And honestly, I don't really think there is a way to cheat effectively and safely. And even if there was, you're not gonna hear from me, because I think everyone should put in the effort and actually work towards their goals. So that's my rant, and I just needed to put that in there and vent to someone. But yeah, don't be a cheater. That's just stupid. All right, the next question is, what is your school organization system and how do you schedule your priorities for each week or day? And I would definitely recommend getting a planner for that. I have a planner. I showed it in a previous video. I will link that. It's the same procrastination video. And I like my planner because it has a month view and a week view. So I write all of my big events in the month, and then in every week I write everything I have to do for the week. And I also write important events in the top section of it. So the next question is, what do I think about meal prepping? Did I ever try it, and would I recommend it? And so if you're just going to college and you're going to be a freshman, it will be very hard to meal prep because most people don't have access to a kitchen. But when I moved off campus, I did meal prep. I sort of have my own way of meal prepping. So like, I don't make all of my meals for the week, but like on Sundays I would make like a big batch of chili and sort of eat that through the week, or I roast a bunch of vegetables and then I would eat them in different ways. And I think meal prep is actually really awesome, and it's a great time saver, especially if you don't mind like eating the same thing every week. And like, personally, I love leftovers, so that doesn't bother me. I was actually thinking of sort of filming an example meal prep video because I actually do it more now that I'm in graduate school. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments below of this video. And then for our final question, someone asked me something along these lines, and I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but a lot of people say that in college you have three things: sleep, good grades, and fun. And you're supposed to pick two of them. And they asked me if that was true and like, how do I balance? And I hate to tell you guys, but it kind of is true. It would be impossible to get a full night's of sleep, to get good grades, and to go out and have a crazy social life in college. And even in the real world too. But you know, that's the thing about college. It's a learning experience. It's learning how to become adult and to function in our society, and learning that life is all about balance. So maybe one day I would pick sleep and good grades. If I have an exam coming up, I'm not going to be really focused on fun. But the next week I may have less projects in school, and so I may focus a little bit more fun, and luckily I'll be able to focus a little less on getting good grades. You know, life is like a give and take. Sometimes you're going to have weeks or months or maybe years that are more stressful, and sometimes you're going to have more free time and time to enjoy yourself. So I really think it's all about finding that balance, finding what is important to you in life. And remember that you should not just be totally sleeping and totally studying every single moment of every day because you're just gonna burn out, and that's not fun either. You do need to have a balance, like find an activity or two that you find will relieve your stress and that you enjoy doing. You know, go out to dinner with your friends like a few times a week, or make time to call home, like go on a hike, go for runs. You know, develop who you are as a person, find your likes and your interests and pursue those, as well as pursuing your academic career, because we're all multifaceted people. Like you are not just an engineer. You are also someone who likes to cook, someone who loves to watch Netflix. Like, I am not just a physical therapist. I'm also someone who likes to take pictures of my food and post them on Instagram. So college is a really awesome time, like I said, to mature as a person, develop who you want to be, make some awesome friends, and, you know, experience life. So that's all of the questions that I'm going to cover today. I know this was a really long video, but I hope this was helpful for you guys and that you got some informative information about it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. I will try to get back to them all if I can. I'm going to be filming 2 more videos, one about graduate school and one specifically about physical therapy school, because that is the career that I am studying. So once those videos are posted, I will put them in the description of this video as well, so you guys can check those out if you're also interested in learning about that. But other than that, I don't think I have anything else to say. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye!